real after attacks across 3 continents, including that horrifying scene we just talked about in Tunisia. And now a new analysis by the Clarion Project finding more than 42 million Arabs have someone that's positive on ISIS, and they in fact support the terror group. The terror group winning over more than 8 million supporters in 11 different Arab nations. Ryan Morrow is a security analyst with the Clarion Project. That is very scary. How is it that ISIS is reaching such a wide vast? I mean, just so many people, the swath of people, millions of people following ISIS. How do they do it?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to success, is that once they appeared successful, they were able to put out this narrative that you may disagree with us, but obviously agrees with us because, look, we're being successful, and that's how you judge who is right and who is wrong in radical Islamic theology. And what we found when we were looking at 4 different polls that all came up with very similar results is that there's about 22 million people across the Arab world who are strong supporters of ISIS. If you expand it to include those that say that they kind of like ISIS, they're somewhat positive, that's when it swells to about 42 million.
I remember a day when we talked so much about al-Qaeda. We don't ever seem to talk about al-Qaeda, but ISIS does something differently than al-Qaeda did in recruiting supporters. What is it that ISIS does almost better, I hate to say, than al-Qaeda did?
Well, they're much better at messaging. They've been able to bridge the gap between Western culture and radical Islamic ideology. So it's common to see ISIS folks online referencing Western culture and Western movies, whereas al-Qaeda is more puritanical in their messaging. But what we did find also is that al-Qaeda still has more support than ISIS even has. But ISIS is the bigger threat right now because of how they've been able to mobilize. And keep in mind, those numbers, as frightening as they are, the vast majority of Arabs, according to these polls, do reject ISIS. But even with this small minority, ISIS has so many people that they can recruit from.
I want to talk about the feds issuing a terror bulletin ahead of the 4th of July weekend. We also want to be very clear here, there has been no specific threat. But nonetheless,
screens sometimes gets confusing, okay, especially with the new go button that I talked about briefly yesterday. All right, so here we are, and we're talking a little bit about ISIS. 42 million. What do you think about that number? I was surprised to hear that number. Now, there is some stuff you got to put out there. First, let me introduce yourself. I'm the Uncensored Report. This is Francesco Abbruzzino. This is a one-man operation. I do all the technical aspects, research, everything. Just like on all the Facebook pages and the website, it is all me. Now, on this Clarion Project, obviously Fox News, a little bit right-leaning. Clarion Project is it's a neocon nonprofit. And what they do is they've put out a few videos out there warning about Islam and the dangers that will come from it. And the pure brutality behind it. I don't think we need the Clarion Group to tell us about the brutality behind ISIS. But it is, I did want to be upfront and say it is a neocon group. Now, they did get their research from different polls from the Iraq-based Independent Institute of Administration and Civil Studies, Society Studies, from a Zogby poll, from a Doha-based Arab Center Research and Policy Study, and from a FICRA Forum Commission. And they do have several neocons that are on their board that help them come out and gather this information. They don't really make the list of members available anymore, so I'm not sure who's part of that organization. But 42 million, so I don't know if that's a right-leaning organization that's trying to scare the crap out of people, or if it's pretty accurate. But you include Zogby and the different studies that they reference there, you got to believe there's some validity to it. So that's all very, very concerning. All right, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. I'm going to start off primarily talking about Greece, Puerto Rico, and the implications that all this could have on America. And it's something that I think many people aren't covering, and it's something that's obviously being underreported. Greece is a big deal. It's a big to-do, folks. And you know what? Actually, yeah, let's go ahead and go to that because I forgot I wanted to start covering the news up front. Well, let's do this. Let's go ahead. Let's cover the news, and I'll put you guys on a split screen. We'll cover some of the headlines that are out there, and then we'll come back, and we'll start talking about Greece and some of the other stuff that I wanted to talk about a little bit more in depth. So let me get you guys over to that screen, and here we go. This was concerning, especially since I'm a rep, or I vet, and I am a Persian War, they call it vet, Iraqi war vet. VA. VA said, hey, we're not accepting any new patients. I did see the 60 Minutes documentary this weekend with the head of the VA. He seems like somebody that's in there and trying to make the changes, but like he said, it's a huge behemoth monster with a lot of bureaucracy. They have, I think they have two different lists of people that want to get fired. One has your basic list of 35, and then there's another list that say here's an additional 1,000. But they got to go through almost like a court system, a court process, just to get the okay to terminate these people. And it's a bunch of bureaucratic red tape. Google Photos identifying black people as gorillas, racist software, and it isn't new. That's an article that was put out by Fusion. I have not had a chance to read it yet. FBI warnings for the 4th of July. You know, I mentioned it yesterday, and it's looking like they're taking this very serious, and they're setting up actually command centers throughout the United States, according to Fox News. And there's reporters in this particular article where an FBI agent tells their friends avoid 4th of July celebrations. So it's a huge concern, and it's making me wonder what's going on, and will there be some type of action from ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whoever it be, on the 4th of July. Like I said, you don't normally see the FBI coming out and saying, well, we're setting up these command centers throughout the states just because we're that concerned about action on the 4th of July due to the chatter that's out there. This is utterly ridiculous. It's a student's gender identity determines the restroom. We all know that. I think it was in the White House or the VP, one of those buildings over there. They set up a transgender bathroom. Well, this one basically is saying, look, students, they may be transgender, and essentially you have to go out and set up a bathroom for these transgenders. Otherwise, you can be sued, and it's for the students at the school. And this essentially said, the department says in a statement of interest filed Monday that failure to do so amounts to sex discrimination under Title 9 of the U.S. Education Amendment to set up these bathrooms for these individuals. And that's coming out from the Justice Department. So exciting stuff there. Transgender. Jesus, I'm tired of hearing about that. Banks of England warns about Greece and then how it's going to trigger a market sell-off. I'm going to talk more about this, folks. I don't think people realize the major implications of what's happening over in Greece, and especially with the market conditions, the way they are, the financial markets, it's quite concerning. WikiLeaks saying they're coming out with a new leak about Germany, France, and Greece. Let's see. That one, Mother Jones. Obama and GOPers work together to kill Bush torture probe. And this is Mother Jones is a very liberal-leaning website. 3,000 pages, Hillary. It's mostly redacted. I think we all knew that. But, you know, you got a question. It's coming from her personal email, and they got to redact most of it. It tells me it shouldn't have been on a personal email. It should have been there in the first place. I didn't need that to tell me it. They're talking about how it's just getting totally crazy over in Greece with the pensioners not being able to get their money, and people are really starting to get concerned. And let's see, public schools, they speak half the people in New York speak other languages other than English. Not surprising. Nationalizing police, we're going to talk in detail about that because that is a concern of mine. Jordan, Turkey invading Syria, something you're just not hearing about on major media. We're going to talk more about that. And there's a story, individual talking about how he escaped becoming the next Dylan Roof. So we got a lot of stories out there. Cuba opening up their embassy deal with the United States today. It's being announced. And let's go ahead and get started on some of the stuff I want to talk about. There's the fires with KKK. I'm going to mention that briefly too. So we'll cover a lot of ground today, hopefully, and hence why we got started now. So we're over here. We're in the Eurozone. We're talking about Greece. We're talking about the capital controls. We're talking about closing down the banks. We're talking about the prime minister. And he's called for a national referendum on Sunday to come out there and vote on which direction they should go in. He's planning, basically by doing this, he's trying to call the bluff of the European Union and the IMF. And they're trying to force his country to accept severe austerity, which I believe is the fourth time. Basically, Greece owes about $366 billion out there. And what's amazing is they owe it, who they owe it to, and who's benefited from them taking this money. It hasn't been the people of Greece, yet the people of Greece are on the lam for this money. Now, almost none of the huge amount of money loaned to Greece has actually gone there. No, that money that's been loaned to them has gone to pay off the bankers. Which bankers? German and French bankers that got crazy, that got overzealous, loaning out the money. So essentially, they're coming in and saying, hey, we're going to loan, the German government, French government, the European Union, they're coming in and saying, we're going to loan you money, not to help take care of the people, but we're going to take that money. You're never going to touch it because we're going to funnel it back to our banks. Amazing. Corp Watch report. They talked about the corrupt Greek politicians, how they borrowed all these billions of dollars under the shaky government schemes for their banks, and now it's time. They're calling them out. They're saying you got to pay this stuff up. You know, and the German banks, when they did this, they were under pressure by the German government. They were wanted to become bigger, badder banks. Government was saying, let's do it. Jai over in France, Chirac was saying, hey, let's start this private process of privatizing French banks into the 80s and shoulder the responsibility of the business community. That's where it all got started. And the French banks, they were like, hey, sure, we'll do it. They knew they could not make billions of dollars by competing against Germany, nor German banks were expecting to vanquish the French. They looked instead at a simpler, easier market to loan out a plentiful supply of cash, knowing that it was backed by their governments. And hence, the euro comes along in 1999, the common currency. And I think this article that I'm looking at says they loaned out a staggering $704 billion to Greece and Ireland, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. These are all the countries that are in trouble because they got to, in turn, take that money back and pay the bankers. Amazing. And I'm sort of awe-shocked. So the Greeks, they're going to go there. They're going to vote on the European austerity package. It's going to be this Sunday. Not sure which way to go. You know, are the older pensioners who are really suffering now without that money going to be upset? You got the younger people. They're used to not having it, so they're fine. It's life is normal for them. So what's going to happen? Who's going to be held accountable for this? The bankers? I seriously doubt it. Seriously doubt that. You know, many people think that essentially what the European Union is trying to do is trying to force regime change, which essentially they are. And what they've done is they've come in, because this is a fairly new government in Greece, a couple months old. And they've come out and changed the game plan, which is different than it was under the previous government. And it's ironic that the European Central Bank decided Sunday to limit its credit to Greece. And what it did is they decided to limit it to the level that was enough to cause the Greek banking system to close. And they knew this. And what they're thinking is, if we can get these banks to close, we're not going to have a meltdown, just close. The people are going to get upset, and they're going to force the government to either leave or go with the plan we want. And what it has done is it's obviously pushed Greece to a more serious financial crisis, along with many other countries. This is a global issue. So why? Why did they take this harsh action? Was it regime change? Because the Greeks decided to hold this referendum instead of accepting the last-minute offer of the European Union. And that offer was something like cutting the Greek pensions even further, a regressive tax increase. obviously things that are going to be difficult for the Greek government to sell to their citizens. It was hard to sell the last round of austerity. Now they even want more. And, just 10 days after the re-election of this new government, not re-election, the election of this new government, the ECB cut off the main line of credit to all Greek banks for no obvious reason whatsoever, except for the rhetoric that was coming out of them saying, we'll just drop out of the euro. And so essentially they put a limit on how much the Greek banks could lend to the government. And that's something that the previous government did not have. So from the European Union authorities' point of view, regime change is the only logical strategy to get these guys to come on board. And you see this kind of stuff all the time. Ukraine. The Ukrainian government was pro-Russian. European Union wanted them to come on board onto their plan and build these closer ties with Europe. They shot it down. Europe didn't like that, so they went in, instigated, gave $5 million, I think it was $5 million to the protesters, caused the uprising, put their own puppet in there who's an ex-IMF guy. If the European Union doesn't get their way, the United States doesn't get their way, they're going to get it through other options. And so what European Union has done is they've succeeded in pushing this Greek economy back into a recession. And there's essentially no future for Greece, no future for their people, and the people are concerned, and rightfully so. And so it brings up the tragedy that's occurring over in Puerto Rico. Everybody's got their eyes all trained on Greece, what's happening over in Greece. They're teetering on the brink of disaster. So the Puerto Rican governor comes out on Monday and announces, hey, we owe $72 billion. We have that in debt. And guess what? We're not going to pay it. And I guess Puerto Rico's problems aren't new. They were new to me, but they're not new. They're not likely to be resolved anytime soon, just like Greece's problems aren't going to get resolved anytime soon. And I fear, and what I think is that the situation in Puerto Rico is even worse than reports are telling us. And I was reading this one article. Not sure who is this article? Tragedy Fusion. And what it says is nothing's more fundamental or important than clean drinking water. And what they do is they go into detail how in San Juan they don't always have clean drinking water. This is in their capital. And what they do is the residents of the city have their water cut off entirely for 48 hours every 3 days. Can you imagine that? San Juan. Now, I surfed there. I surfed 2.5 hours away from San Juan in a small village. I didn't see that, but then I was staying on a Coast Guard base, so I wouldn't likely see that. But, just like Greece, Puerto Rico has a massive debt, which is a huge burden that they realistically can't pay back, and they're going to default, and the default is going to prove extraordinarily painful in a large part due to the constraints that we up here in the north, the United States, are imposing on them. And so the big question is, what's going to happen with that debt? What's going to happen once they stop paying their creditors? It's not like they can go to a bankruptcy court. It's not like that in this society. Whenever you have a debt default, it's painful. It's going to be extremely painful. And if life in Puerto Rico is bad, now it's going to get much worse. It's not going to get much better. Hence why many of the people are flocking over here to the mainland. They're getting out of there while the going is good. But they're coming here. But is the United States much better off? I touched on this significantly yesterday. When are they going to start hoarding in the United States? Are we going to see the grocery store rushes? Are we going to see the benzene gas stations going? ATMs up in full force. All due to anticipating some form of collapse. Which is possible. The dominoes are starting to fall. So what happens when our country collapses? to an extent that it can no longer pay its debt. And I can tell you, the United States can no longer pay its debt. The only reason we can pay our debt is the fact that we can print up a ton of money as the reserve currency. If we weren't the reserve currency, we couldn't print up all this money, we would have to institute austerity. Austerity, folks. I mean, our banking system, they're bankrupt. What would happen if they close their doors and the government loses their ability to mitigate the crisis? You got that uncertainty, people start to panic. You can't get money, you can't get food, you can't get your medicines. Now, many people out there will say, look, that's Greece, that's Puerto Rico, that's not the United States, that's not this advanced economy. They're not even in the same playing field. But as a country, the United States is worse off than Greece. You're just not seeing it because of the trickery that the government's doing, such as printing up all this money. In our country, nearly 100 million people are dependent upon the government. They're dependent upon the government for food stamps, Social Security checks, Medicare, health care, Obama phones. So even some kind of short-term financial crisis could spiral out of control. I don't know if that's likely. It's possible. You'll hear a lot of strategists out there that say, oh yeah, it's very likely. Just look at what happens 2 days after a hurricane hits in Katrina. How chaotic it got there. So you got the Bank of International Settlements. They came out and they said government and banks will be unable to fight the next financial crisis because they've used up all their ammo before. And these are the people that create the monetary policy of the world. I think I said yesterday, 70% of the people expect some kind of economic crisis. Only 3% are prepared. Only 3% have taken steps. And so you got to wonder what happens if Greece shuts their banks, their doors, their food shelves empty, the benzene runs out, the medicine runs out. How will the residents, the citizens of the United States act? Will it be like Katrina tenfold? No, and we can continue to think, hey, everything's good, everything's peachy, it's good times. But even to take a precursory look at what's happening around the world suggests that the global economy is in trouble. We got Greece, you got Puerto Rico, you got the China stock market, which is detonating. It's in trouble. But we're not ready. No emergency cash, no food supply on hand, no water. Banks shut their door. You can't get any money. These are all concerns. They keep me up at night, and they should keep you up at night. So what's this bringing on? The racial strife. Why is that? Is there racial strife? Is the government out there actively promoting it to avoid any, to diffuse or to mislead, misdirect people from the financial crisis that's out there? I mean, there's got to be some reason that Obama and Holder, while he was in office, seemed to take action that they know would only make racial strife worse. And it doesn't help with major media because that's all they focus on. The police killings, motivated by race, which I don't believe they are. You don't hear about when a black man shoots the cop, but you hear about it when a cop shoots a black man. It's a technique. Incite hatred. And will distract people from what the real issue is out there. Let's go out and burn some churches. Get the racial tensions out there in the forefront. They won't notice the decline of American business standards of living. The deteriorating American way is pushing everything to the background. People will feed off fear. Makes the media happy. The ratings will go up. My Facebook pages go crazy when issues like that occur. And what it does is it distracts people from seeing that the middle class is crumbling. They're just struggling to stay in existence. I see it here in Venice all the time. People are in bad need of help. Our jobs are not coming back. They're going offshore. You got the robotics and AI forcing people out. Low interest rates set by the Federal Reserve. They're skewing the economy. Concentrating our wealth in the hands of the fat banksters out there. You got Greece, Puerto Rico. Will there be another banker bailout like 2008? Big too big to fail. So instead, you get this popular outrage directed at the racial issue, divisive social issues. Maybe they won't realize what's going on financially. Only a handful of people are discussing the very serious issues, the very serious signs that are tipping us towards a real crisis. And I don't know what the breaking point is, folks. I have no idea. I wish I did. All right, we're going to take a quick break so I can pull up for the next segment. Or I think we were. Here we go. Okay, I spent way too much time on that. Looks like I spent about, close to 30 minutes? I only meant to spend like 15 minutes. All right, so I'm limited. I have like 15 things. I'll take my outline of what I want to talk about. And on my outline is about 5 or 10 websites with different information on the subject matter. Some of it's left, some of it's right, some of it's down the road. I'll go through and I'll highlight some of the talking points that I want to make sure I hit, and then you converse about it. One of the issues that I did want to talk about is the nationalization of our police force. It's something that's very concerning to me. It's something you don't hear about a lot. It's something that started when they started putting out all the heavy machinery, the tanks, the armored personnel carriers, the grenade launchers, and getting them out to the local police. That's when I believe it started. I forget the name of that program, that federalized program. I've seen it, talked about it so many times, I can't believe I don't remember it. Title IX? Shoot, I forgot it. So you got efforts out there to nationalize the local police across America. It's been happening for decades. You got Obama. He's decided to accelerate it. Don't get me wrong, this is just not an Obama thing. Bush did it too. So Obama's out there, he's pushing and openly working to turn our local cops into an extension of federal power. Just like that Baltimore mayor, she was on a committee discussing the issue, and she was pushing federalization of the police force. You know, besides the fact that it's just unconstitutional, it's a terrible idea. When I think of federalized police forces, I think of one thing: Stasi. Nazi Germany, federalized police force. So Obama's out there, he's trying to militarize police departments. He's doing it at an unprecedented rate. They're out there attacking the rights of many Americans. I put it up on my Cop Watch section on my page, constantly violating Americans' rights. And they're all doing it in what they're saying is the effort to get the fight against the war on drugs. Bottom line is that these weapons that are used in war zones, Iraq and everywhere, should not be on the streets of the United States. But they're being flooded there. After the unrest in Ferguson, we saw them over in Ferguson. Much of that was fueled by George Soros, and that came out. He put billions into that. Washington Times did an in-depth investigation and found out it's Soros's group. So Obama started complaining, hey, we have too much militarization on the streets. So he put out another executive order. He created a whole new task force, the Task Force of 21st Century Policing. He said, let's study this issue. And to no surprise, what does the task force say? They say, hey, we need to militarize our police. We need to take unconstitutional action and militarize our police. Now, they're not calling it that, just like FEMA camps aren't called FEMA camps. But that's what they are. They're FEMA camps. He's not calling them nationalized or federalized. No. He's just calling them the federal standards for police. At the same time, you got the likes of Al Sharpton, who is a close consultant, has the ear of Obama pushing for national police. UN boss Ban Ki-moon, he's out there. He's demanding that city police obey international standards, federalizing the police. So Obama thinks, hey, we federalized, we nationalized education through that lovely Common Core, which has been an utter failure. Why not impose federal bribes to our states like we did with Common Core? And they'll take these bribes for the police departments, these grants in the form of grants, if they want to stay alive, if they want to stay viable, if they want to stay afloat. And when they do that, they'll have to follow our national standards, our federalization of the police force. So he went out, he's got I think 6 pilot cities. He's out there, he's testing some of these schemes, building trusts, using taxpayer dollars to deploy experts and researchers out there who are charged with training officers on national standards, what Obama's administration deems to be nationalized standards, nationalized police force. He sits there and he pretends like he wants to ban the militarization of the police, military gear, but it's just a deception, folks. What he really did say is that local and state police will only get certain military equipment if they agree to federalizing policing standards, nationalized police. So, will we do that? It's a terrible idea. History shows it's dangerous, and like I said, I mentioned the freaking Nazi Socialist SS, East German Stasi, Soviet KGB. When you hear those three, do you think nationalized police is a good idea? Because that's what they essentially were. I heard something today. If power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So what do you think will happen in D.C. if they're given this power, this control? We need to maintain our freedom. We need to support our local police and keep them independent. These Obama cops patrolling the street will not be a good thing. So you need to get involved with the local area. Tell them, don't take these bribes from Obama. We don't want these federal standards. I don't know if it will work, but it's worth a shot. What do you say? What say you? And we'll be right back. Okay, caught me finishing off my water, my throat. You'll be amazed at how much time, effort, how draining it is to research and talk about issues into a computer on a daily basis. And it's only an hour. I think I used to do 2 hours. I just didn't have the time. Then I didn't have the time to do an hour. Now I'm back to an hour. The show will not be on tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. I actually make money doing medical consulting, and I got to go out to see one of my clients in Jacksonville. It's a day-long trip. It's like a 4-hour drive. I get there, I do my consulting thing, I drive back, and then I got 2 lovely girls I have to take care of. So, and teenage girls, you know how that goes. So, I did want to touch a little bit on the vaccine thing. We had yesterday where I discussed about California legislation coming in and saying, hey, look, there's no longer any waiver to get out of vaccinations. You have to get it, tough luck. Forget the side effects. Forget some of the dangerous implications of taking these vaccines. You got to take it. Forget the trove of experts saying that they're not good for you, you got to take it. So now you got this clinic. It's actually a network of clinics. It's one of the largest in Austin. And they set out new guidelines asserting that clinic facilities will no longer take kids as patients if they have not been vaccinated. And they will prohibit these kids that are not vaccinated from being seen by any doctors. And they want you to follow the ARC's recommended vaccine schedule, which calls for 21 inoculations into infants. 21 that you need to receive before your first year. And one of the biggest ones that they are pushing, which I'm against, is Merck's controversial Gardasil vaccine. I think some are saying by 18. They want you to have it by 9. And this is despite the hundreds of young women that have died from this in the U.S. Hundreds have died from this. Thousands have been harmed. They're saying, oh, parents are just confused about vaccines because of the internet. Forget all the factual documentation out there. Forget all the experts out there. It's the internet. Forget the $3 billion paid to families who suffered to death from debilitating side effects of vaccines. Forget that. So, 2 bad moves where government well, this isn't even really government. This is just some clinic taking unprecedented moves to force you to get vaccinations. Another story I touched on yesterday, Turkey. And I haven't really seen it on major media where Turkey's going into sending troops, 18,000 troops into Syria. And the reason being is they got the Turks, or the Kurds, I'm sorry, not the Turks. And they don't want the Kurds to be able to set up their own state, which is the same concern they had when the Kurds were over in Iraq. But we're talking about the Syrian Kurds. So now they want a buffer zone. They say, them and Jordan. Jordan says, we need a buffer zone, and we're going in there too. Jordan is more about, I think Jordan's is more about security. They want a buffer zone. They're really concerned. They're getting all these refugees in there, and they want to make sure there's some kind of buffer between them and this fighting. I get it. Turkey, though, their whole goal is to go in there and knock the Kurdish rebels out. They don't want a Kurdish state. They will die before there's a Kurdish state. So they're going in under the pretense that, hey, we want to go in there and just build up a buffer zone so we're safe and the ISIS groups are not right on our border, which is bull because they have been letting Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Al-Nusra, every other rebel group, use their border to go back and forth. They're buying their oil that they're stealing out of Iraq at discounted prices. So it's bull that they're worried about ISIS. They're buddies with ISIS. They're using this as a pretense to go in after these Kurdish groups. These Kurdish groups that have stood by so strongly and fought for their country. And this should be alarming, but you're not seeing it on major media anywhere. I just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on that and something too. Back when I was doing my show a lot, I was one of the first to talk about Ebola. I was talking about Ebola on my show before major media. And then I remember major media came out and said, oh yeah, there's 50 cases. And then they came out a month later, oh, there's 1,000 that have died. And they'll come out every once in a while. But now Liberia, which essentially came out and said, hey, we're free of Ebola. Now they got a 17-year-old boy who's tested for Ebola. They're quarantining him. They're quarantining the 27. Well, actually, I think he's passed away. Yeah, his corpse tested positive. And they're quarantining these 27 contacts that he's had over the past few months. The community is concerned, and it's a virus that has not gone away. It's a virus that continues to plague that area of Africa, and it's a concern that we should continue to have. So they're still finding that over there in Liberia. Had some more news. Let me see if I can touch on anything real quick due to time constraints. I was going to talk a little bit about fracking. New York State has banned fracking. Fracking is a major concern, especially here in Florida, right off my coast. I believe we have 2 licenses set up where they're licensed to start fracking. I could do a whole separate show on some of my concerns there, which I'll probably touch on, and I might elaborate more on that story on Monday. There's another story out there about the U.S. is funding Afghan local police, and it's destabilizing the country, empowering the militias. And, I'm really concerned about this whole Afghanistan thing. And the reason being is you heard the Taliban came out and said, ISIS, you better leave. We don't want you here. And we'll kick your butts. But lo and behold, ISIS is making a lot of ground over in Afghan, but you're really not hearing about it. You're not hearing about it at all. And I'll try to post, I think I posted one article. I'll try to post some more. So ISIS is there. They're making a lot of ground. They're more extreme than Al-Qaeda. More extreme than Taliban that's there. Taliban is the leading, like the FSA over in Syria. But you're not hearing anyone talk about it. That whole vacuum effect when we pulled our troops out. Pulled our troops out of Iraq. Pulled our troops out of Afghan. Now we're seeing that whole vacuum impact. We decided to go in and country build. We decided to get rid of Gaddafi. We decided not to support, what's that guy's, not Morsi, the guy in Egypt, Sadat, God, I can't remember his name. We decided not to support him. Brotherhood came in with Morsi. Instability in Egypt. I thought I saw something about ISIS attacking and killing 70 people in Egypt, 70 soldiers. We all know about Iraq. We wanted to regime change in Syria, so we sponsored ISIS there through backdoors through Saudi Arabia. Look what a mess it is there. I tell you what, wherever the U.S. gets in and does their little nation building, we disrupt and destroy the lives of so many folks. You don't see it on national TV, but if you read a lot of these articles out there, and I tell you what, a lot of people look at alternative media and say, oh, it's conspiracy or alternative. They research. They're very factual. And they're very factual because they're always targeted. People are always coming after them. Alex Jones is one of the best. He's very factual with his documentation. I have no problem sharing his information. Sometimes I'll get rid of Alex Jones on there because people automatically think, oh, conspiracy, and they won't read it. And the fact is, I want you to read it because I know it's factual. I know he's done his homework. Okay, so hopefully we're doing what the show's goal is to educate, inspire, and help you to promote change. If I'm only reaching one of you, that's great. I don't care if it's 1 or 20, as long as I'm impacting somebody's life and they're making that change and they're touching somebody's life, that's all that matters. Like I said, I will not be on the air tomorrow. It's Friday, and it's the 3rd. I'll be traveling off to Jacksonville for a one-day trip. And we'll be back on the air on the 6th, so have a good 4th of July. Remember to go to theuncensoredreport.com. You can get my Scoop National page there, or go to the scoopnationalnews.com, which is a direct link to that page. If you're local, just go to the Scoop News Show or the Scoop Radio Show, and that will get you the local news within Sarasota County. And that's it. Everybody have a great day, and I will see you later.